Okay, so I will now pass the time to our speakers. So Teresa will introduce herself and also begin sharing. Okay, let's go.
Yep. Thanks, Sean. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And yeah, it's my first time here. I okay. Actually, I have my slide, so let me just do that first. And I have my notes also, but I just don't know whether it will affect the screen share. Is it okay? Does it look all right?
Yep.
You don't see my notes, right?
No, 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 no.
Okay, can. Very good. All right. Okay, so I'm here to share about money, but I must say I'm not like the expert, and I'm just here to share some reflections that I've learned through the years, like what the Lord has taught me. And of course, there are other areas as well, and happy to also learn from you guys as well, some of your questions if you have any. Okay, yeah, so a bit about myself. So I have 4 pictures here, which I thought like I will use it to introduce myself. So I'm actually from Malaysia. So I grew up there like till like 2010. And you all know what this picture is. It's actually a night market, quite a pasar malam. It's like one of the things that I missed from home. Yeah. Um, so I grew up there. I attended primary, secondary, did my A levels there, and I came over in in 2010. I did food science in NUS. So in Malaysia, I actually did quite well for my studies. Like I was quite a good student. But when I came to NUS, like I realized that, oh no, like it's really difficult. Yeah, or maybe it's a course lah. Like I felt that I didn't really put much consideration into making certain decisions. But anyhow, like I think I've already come to terms with like how God has planned out his way for me lah. And yeah, you would see here like I was probably like one of the many fishes in this big pond called NUS. And of course, like in NUS, I was also part of CF. I was in the PGP CG. And after that, post like graduation, I also helped out a bit lah in some of the programs like GQ, if it's still there. Or it's called Morph. Yeah, it's called Morph now, I think. Yeah. Okay, and 2013, I started my first job. So I did food science, right? So I entered into regulatory compliance in a in a food flavors manufacturer facility. So basically, they sell food flavors lah, like things that you put into your Coca-Cola or your drinks or your confectionery. So I was doing a lot of compliance work. So basically like reading regulations and making sure that our products comply to like local or overseas regulations and yeah, making sure that it meets all the standards. So I was there for about 4 years. Then I thought that I wanted something more because it was a rather small setup lah. It was then an SME. Now it has grown quite big. And I wanted to just be exposed to like more stuff lah. So I went on to my second job, and which is my current job lah. I now so I exited the private sector, and right now I'm kind of in between like the public and the private sector. So we are a trade association that covers like the APAC region. So we basically our members are the companies that are within the food sector, like your big brands like Kellogg, Nestle, those kinds. So I use this picture because like we are looking at things at a very high level, like a bird eye view, if you can put it. So unlike my first job, I really go into the technical parts. But in my role now, like it's really looking things at a high level. So I kind of know a lot about everything, but not not in depth. But that's the nature of it lah. And I think it's good as well because I think I get bored quite easily. So having like a variety also helps to make things interesting lah. Yeah. So yeah, a bit about myself lah and where I am right now. Yeah, so I'll just jump into my sharing for today. I have 20 minutes, so I'll try to manage my time now. But if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to come in. And I think I need my notes right now. Yeah, I have split my sharing today into like 3 C's lah. I'm quite proud of myself that come up with the 3 C's. The first one is content. Yeah, so I just wanted to start by mentioning how do we see value lah? And I know we talk a lot about income, and like even today's theme is called Payday, right? But I thought it would be nice to also think about other things that also carry value, but it may not be as tangible as like your money pay that pops up in your bank account. Yeah, and someone once shared with me this illustration, which I thought it actually made a lot of sense. So it's actually like this triangle lah. And I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at things lah. Like it may not be just these 3 areas, but I think for me at least, I thought that these 3 areas kind of like fit into this picture lah. And I'll explain a bit more as we go along. So so I thought about value, right? So and you see one of those at the top of the triangle here is income, and it's clear that our job gives us our income lah, and with that money it gives us the freedom to do the things that we want to do, like go for holiday or buy the things that we want to enjoy lah. And it's something very valuable that we have, but it's not just about that lah. And I hope like looking at this pyramid, like it helps us to also appreciate value in other parts of our life besides income. And here I've just put down 2 things here lah. First one is the time that we have on hand. So I think a question that we can ask ourselves would be, how does our job gives us the time to do the things that God has called us to do, be it within the job itself or out of the job. For example, like if your job like is a direct relation to what like God has called you to do, you know, like maybe like student ministry, for example, yeah, or out of the job, like whether out of your day-to-day job, like does it frees you up like the time to serve in other capacity, and how are we using that time that we have wisely. And the second one on the right, relationships, right? Like different types of relationships. So how has God placed different people in our lives, be it colleagues or church mates or our friends, and do we treasure them? Like what kind of value do we put in that category, and how are we building up these relationships, and how are we investing in them? So yeah, I think with this slide, I just wanted to start off by saying that, you know, as much as income matters, right? It's not just about the income, but also being conscious about how God's blessing also comes very evidently in different parts of our lives. So it's really broadening that idea of value, and also the kind of richness that we have in our lives. Yeah, so with that, I would go into my next slide, which is also using that same triangle to bring in my next point, which is about, you know, a question that I always ask myself, you know, like, oh, how do I know whether this job is the job, you know, and how do I decide, like, oh, whether it's the right one or whether I should move on. And often there's no easy or direct answer to this, but again, like I find this illustration very helpful to know what our job gives us besides our pay again. Yeah, so earlier I talked about seeing value in other aspects of our lives, and definitely, you know, like a job would affect the time that we have on hand and the relationship that we can invest in, and I think that ties up pretty closely also with the time that we have, and that would affect like how much time that we can invest in relationships. So what I find helpful is to think about like, what season am I in right now, and whether this job allows me to achieve the things that I hope to do in this season. And I think in different times of our lives, like the priority can look very different. You know, like for example, like if you're in a season in your life where you want more time to be involved in a particular ministry, then obviously like probably you would be more inclined towards like the bottom left. And and maybe like income would be less important at that point of time, right? Or in another example, if let's say you are starting a family and you have more financial commitments, so and naturally you would have more expectations for the for like income and making sure that it's sufficient, and with that, like you would probably skew more towards like the middle top tip there, right? Like and maybe another example just to also touch on relationships. So if let's say you really enjoy environment in your workplace and you really value the relationship with your coworkers, maybe then like time or income may be less of a priority. Yeah, so I think all in all it's really asking ourselves like where is that balance that allows me to serve God best in my current season of my life. And I think it really looks different for every individual, and it's really not to as much as tempting sometimes to want to become like others or like our peers, but it's really like seeking the Lord and asking like, what do you want me to do right now, and really to run your race well, and to be faithful in wherever that He has called you to. So at this point, maybe I'll just share a bit about my work and how do I find my balance. So like I mentioned, I'm a trade association right now. So I, in terms of income, like honestly, I think it's all right. I wouldn't say that it's super lucrative lah. But I feel that it's sufficient for me at this current time. And even though like it's very easy to naturally want to have more income, but I think what I value about this job is that it frees me, it gives me the time to do other things. Like for example, I won't find myself in a situation where I have to suddenly like OT for a particular day or like work like long hours for throughout the week. And I think it with that I find it quite it gives it's a good balance like between like work and also serving in church lah. For example, like I lead a CG lah in my church, so I it like with the time out of work, like, I find that it gives me like time to also prepare and also connect with people as well. So with that, I can say that I'm rather contented lah with where I am right now. And even though it's tempting sometimes to want to get more lah, right? And I'll talk about that like in my third section. But I think that that's where I am right now. And I hope you find this helpful, because I think when that person shared with me this chart, I find it quite enlightening lah, to know that it's not just about one particular area that we have to chase after, but there are so many other things that we can also consider even as we think about our jobs, and also what does our job give us. Okay, so that's the first C, yeah, to be contented lah, content. And then, yeah, so this is my second part about to consider, and here I want to talk a little bit about giving. So even as like, you know, all of us are like working adults, and it is a privilege to have income, and with that, it also means that it comes with the responsibility to know how to steward it well as well lah. And in the Bible, we know that like the commands of giving and meeting needs are pretty clear. So while these do not start only when we start working, right? So it's not just something that we do after we have our monthly pay, but I mean, we start way before that. And even if we are not working, there are still different ways that, or it doesn't mean that we stop like giving or meeting the needs, right? So, but what I just want to say is that with that additional asset that we have right now, i.e. like our monthly pay is an asset, we can better think about how and where we can give. Yeah. So even as probably most of you just started working, and it's good to hear that you are also actively thinking about like saving and also investing, that kind of thing. Actually, I'm not into investing. I don't know why. I just have zero desire to go into that. But I do admire like my friends who are very eager to learn on that. But yeah, that aside, coming back to this, practice giving. I think it's such an important thing to think about even as you start in your early career. Like even as you think about how do I want to spend my income and how much goes into giving, how much goes into saving, and how much goes into spending. Yeah. So I think I don't know for you all, but have you all felt that giving is a difficult thing to do, like giving like financially to someone, like do you think that it is a difficult thing? And I just want to share two passages here, and I've been also like like reflecting over it during the week, and like how like these passages talks about giving and how it looks like in Acts and Second Corinthians. I'll not read through it, but you all can just look at it as I go along. But here you would see that how it talks about giving beyond our access. And I think what's admirable in Acts is that you would see how like it says that all the believers were one in heart and mind, and whoever has like any land or houses, they sold them, they brought the money, and it's distributed to anyone who had need. And in Second Corinthians, it talks about like so at the present time your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn their plenty will supply what you need. So I hope you get the picture, and I think it's like it really paints like an idea of giving and about being generous. And I think looking at it, I'm just thinking like how much am I like really like embracing this and carrying it in my own lifestyle, and I find it really challenging as well. Like sorry, not challenging, but it challenges myself to consider like our mindset towards giving, like whether it's giving out of the excess or whether I'm willing to go beyond that. Yeah. And earlier I asked about like, do you feel that giving is difficult, right? And I think perhaps like a way of thinking about how can we make giving easier, I think it really goes towards like these 2 points which I would suggest for our consideration. Firstly, it is to acknowledge that all that we have comes from God, right? Like really everything, knowing that nothing belongs to us. Actually, I think we all know about this, but it's just like always like aligning that perspective back to God again, knowing that whatever that is given us is not meant for us to hold on to it so tightly, but it is for us to think about like how can we be a good steward. Sorry. Yeah, and secondly, to view others as how God would. So I think it's that perspective towards people and the kind of value that you see in a person. So when you see relationships or people as the greater treasure, I think giving would be much easier. Just like any kind of choices that you make in life, like obviously like the one that you think is more important, you would choose that thing, right? So I think the same would apply in the way that we view giving as well. Like what kind of priorities do we carry? And when we believe that giving is a blessing, giving becomes much easier. And indeed, like our season of plentiful would be our season to be generous as well. And yeah, so I hope yeah, this helps us to also appreciate like giving. Like it's not just for us to be, it's not just to make us feel deprived of certain things, like, oh, I have to part with my money so that someone has like it meets a need. Yeah, so I think it's, why not like we focus on the gains, like what would my giving bring rather than the losses. And I think again that idea that it's not just about myself but about my brothers and sisters as well. So at this point I want to share a story, a recent, rather recent thing that happened. Yeah, and I will try to bring in like this point about how much to give. So a couple years back, I was in the Philippines for a month. That time I was under GQ, the current MOF program. So I met this lady. Her name is Ate Elsie. I can mention her name because I think it should be okay. Yeah. So so I knew her then lah, and on and off we keep in touch. But in the recent years, we haven't really been keeping in touch lah. Like even though previously she would regularly give prayer requests and things like that. So just so suddenly one day, right, like I suddenly thought about this sister lah, this RTLC, and but I never really took action to really ask her about like how are you, until one day strangely like her message just pops up in my messenger, my Facebook messenger, and I realized that sorry, another message popped up in my messenger, and I clicked into it, and only to realize that actually RTLC actually messaged me a month ago, and I totally missed out on that message for some reason. So I connected with her and I asked her, oh, how are you? And it's during COVID time lah. So I asked her about, oh, how are you doing? And she shared about her difficulty about how things are not doing very good. And actually I have a question that I want to ask her, but actually I hesitated a lot because I knew that it would affect my action also. So basically the question I was thinking was like, how are you doing financially? Cause I know that like what would be her answer, and I know that I should be ready to meet her needs if her answer is that she's in difficult needs And I thought it was difficult back then because I already gave to another organization that month, and I felt that I have to give again. Yeah, so but in the end I asked her that question, and indeed she said it is quite bad, and so it took me a while. I took my time to also process it, and to ask like should I give and how much should I give? And the first question is quite easy to answer because I kind of knew that it cannot be a no I cannot like when someone tells you that sorry, I mean financially, how can I say sorry? God, I'll pray for you. I feel that there should be something more So it's more of the second question about how much to give. But of course, like God didn't give me a specific number So it's really how much that I think would help this this friend of mine. And just on the same day, I felt like it was quite timely as well. I was reading this book I think all of you know Mere Christianity, and actually I find it quite difficult to understand. But out of that chunk of passages I was reading that day, these things stood out to me and it's about giving. And I'll just zoom into the bolded parts So it's bolded by me, where it says if our charities do not at all pinch or hamper us, I should say that they are too small. So when I read that, I was like, wow, like like that level of giving, I think it's really a test like how when we give do we feel that pinch or not, or is it that can give, it doesn't matter. And I think it really takes another level in terms of understanding what giving really means. And I think that's really a lesson that God taught me during that time, to really understand to be ready to give, even though it may be difficult or it may be painful in that particular time, but it is important and relationships and meeting needs are important in God's kingdom. So I think that's a lesson that I learned that time, and also not to dismiss what the Lord has laid on your heart, because it's you feel that oh, this person really needs it, then act on it take action, and I'm sure that you'll be rewarded as well during in that process. Okay, I'm looking at time 19 minutes. Okay, I'm in my last part already. So the last C is to contend. And I think it is easy to say but it is to it's easy to say okay, to prioritize God's work, but I must say that it's not easy. It's difficult, all right? Even as I think about my job and career progression, they always talk about it, right? the grass is always greener on the other side. I think all of us can understand that. Like, we always see that, oh, others seems to have it better. They're having better jobs somehow. Like, am I losing out? Um, and sometimes I question myself also when I see my peers moving to a new job, and even when we talk about our careers, like like doing meetups and stuff like that. And of course, for myself, like it would always be nice to have a pay raise lah. And but yeah, so the question that we can ask ourselves, or I mean, I ask myself also lah, like especially in the recent months as well, I've been thinking a bit more about like what do I really want out of my job, and do I really like, is this gonna be the way things will be like in the next 10 or 20 years as a working adult lah? Like, so what really motivates me? Is it just the next better job, or so-called lah, and or whether it's the next pay raise lah? And are these like really the things that would be my motivation? Or is there something bigger lah? And I think this really brings in the thinking about eternity, and whether do I think about it, or do I how do I how do I lift up like the promise of eternity in my current life as a working adult? Like, does it really, how much does it change my decisions and my lifestyle? And is my focus fixed on just my job, my pay, my pay raise, my next job, or is it fixed on eternity lah? And that really takes like the primary seat in my decisions. Yeah, so I think these two verses are quite important to me also right now. Just looking at where do we keep our treasures, and also not to worry, especially like Matthew 6:33, like very famous verse now, like seek first his kingdom and righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. And I just want to go a little bit backwards where it talks about, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. So actually, like, and the earlier chunks of that chapter all talks about not to worry, and I think it brings a lot of comfort to know that actually, like, God already know that you need whatever that you need, right? Like your basic necessities, what you need to carry on, what you need to serve him well. And you can really, so why do I need to be so bogged down about all these worries? Like, actually, like, all this energy could be channeled into like like seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness, and rather than finding that security, like financial stability, before like pursuing or seeking his kingdom. But here it presents like the reverse lah, whereby like God's kingdom and his work really takes the precedence, and the assurance is that like he will provide whatever that we need. Yeah. So that pretty much sums up like my short sharing. And I think I'll part with this quote from Corrie ten Boom about how to hold everything in your hands lightly, so that you will not be so painful when God takes it away. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Back to you, Sean.
Okay, we will. Thanks, Teresa. I love the triangle. So we will do the Q&A together. Okay, after Yifang. Okay. We will. Hey, are you in? Teresa, you're in a rush or not? Right? All right. Okay. So after the Yifang both the sharing, then we'll do the breakout room. Then we do the Q&A. Okay, so that we can process a bit in the breakout room. Then the Q&A will be a little bit more warmed up lah. Okay. So in Yifang, back now. Let's go, Yifang.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa. It was really very good. I learned a lot also. I think yours is super comprehensive. Mine sucks now. Yeah, but let me just go ahead. Okay, can see the screen, right? Yeah. Hi. Yeah, so thanks, Sean, for letting me share this experience with everyone today. So I guess it's more of sharing of what I've learned through my working journey. Yeah, and some financial aspect of it. To set some context, let me just introduce myself first. So some background, I've been working around 8 years, not including a 1 year gap where I went between my first and second job where I went for a backpacking tour in South Asia and Southeast Asia. I attended SIM, University of London, and I earned my honors in Bachelor of Business. So upon graduation, even though I did business, I didn't know where to go after graduation because business was a general degree, quite a broad degree, and I signed up for that only because my father wanted me to. Yeah, and I didn't really have an opinion on my own. Yeah, so after that, then I applied for some jobs randomly, and through God's direction and some prayers from my dance out group, which Teresa was inside. I got into Switzerland MSC, where my first job was in procurement and supply chain for semiconductors. So that started off my work in private sector from 2012 to 2015. And my second job was in a Korean MNC Samsung, where the supply chain procurement was a bit more hectic and more demanding. And then in a really, really unforeseen career change, we got Providence and his space. For the next 5 years, I switched and worked in public agency, where the main goals of the agencies are to support Singapore SMEs to expand or to strengthen their business in Singapore as well as beyond Singapore. A little bit more about myself. Just celebrated my 5th year wedding anniversary. Met my husband in church. We grew up in the church. But I'm a second gen Christian, so I joined the church only in uni, and we didn't really talk much until like some years later lah. Yeah. Then 2 freeloaders. Both of us, we rescued 2 sisters cat from a hoarder 3 years ago. When we first got them, they were like quite bony and then quite scrawny. But now I look at them, sometimes I feel like looking at a pig. They don't really pay rent. They don't really say thanks to us for all the food and all the lodging. Quite irritating. But then it's okay. Because they were abused from the hoarder when they were young, so actually they have some PTSD. They are quite afraid of humans, and actually for the one of them, the one in the box on the right, we are still unable to like carry, stroke, or even touch her with a finger because she's just very, very scared. And then the other one who's on the back, she allowed us to only hold her for like maximum like 10 seconds, and then she will just like jump off. Yeah, and the issue is that like, both of them don't integrate and don't really like live very well with each other. So we have to separate them in the whole house. So like, for example, one is in the kitchen and then one is in the living room. They cannot interact in much of a fight. And then usually like they'll scratch each other, and then there'll be like blood all over the floor lah. Yeah. And moving on, lastly, I left my job in the public sector 2 months ago. And I'll share a little bit more about that later.
Hey, Ifang, I think your voice audio is a bit blurry. I think you need to hold the mic closer to your mouth.
Okay, is this better now?
That's way better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so rewinding to the freshly graduated me, right? I remember feeling like a very this urgency to find a job quickly because I had to repay the bank loans for uni fees. Through uni, actually, I supported myself and supported my own self through, and I earned my own allowance. So actually, I wasn't in a very, very good financial position, but I remember giving 100% of my first paycheck to church. Reason being that I felt like I've gained a lot. I've learned so much about God, and I think just knowing God in church was invaluable. And then I didn't have much to give during uni, so when I graduated and I had some money on hand, I really wanted to give back to God. Yeah, and I felt like I guess that might be a struggle. I mean, that's definitely a conflict to me because I didn't have much money and I'm giving all of it like 100% without definitely knowing that nothing will come back to me lah. Yeah. And this 100% paycheck thing, tithing thing was not really mandated by church or anything. It's just that a uni friend that time he told me that he was doing this 100% paycheck to church thing, and I also thought about it lah, and then I felt I recognized the purpose behind it, so I just gave 100% to tithing. Yeah. And at that time I was also drawing, I calculated about 25% lesser than normal fresh grads. So usually that time, remember, like I was living from paycheck to paycheck, and by the third week of every month I was like a bit like I don't have much left. And I also remember like I also owe like credit card money, and there was also an incident at on the last day of the like repayment date, before the interest starts to incur. And then God answered my prayer lah. And then like a disbursement came in really in the 11th hour, so that I could repay my credit card bills. So I think through the experience I'm quite glad to prioritize God, and to recognize that God is a giver, and then God gives back in expected and unexpected ways lah sometimes. And I think in him there isn't really much lack, like maybe financially, like maybe that time like the bank account like is nothing impressive, but at the same time I felt like I really don't need anything more. Yeah, even if I want something more, it's really for unnecessary purpose. So learning from the Bible, I believe that God is our actual boss behind the tangible, I mean the direct bosses that we work for. And because if he's the real boss, then if let's say I'm seeking for a promotion, and definitely that in turn increase my monthly salary, right? Then our earthly bosses are really just like a cover for our real boss, who is God. And after working for some years, I see bosses who really come and go. Like it could be due to maybe they left because there was a merger, and then there's new bosses, then the CEO need to rotate, or because of, let's say, office politics, and then like certain senior management are being cut out lah, or being forced to resign. And you realize that you just need to adapt, and then need to restart, and then start to understand like what is the new boss quirks, and then how to adapt to their personality, their preference, and their way of receiving information. And after a while that became quite tiring. But for me, I think understanding that there is one constant God, and this rock that we rely on that is unchanging helps me to accept things easier, that actually like our earthly bosses are really just vessels, and they are maybe like a middle management to our one true God, like who is God. Yeah. Yeah, so I was also recounting, like reflecting my first paycheck to my last paycheck, like how much it has grown. So actually it grown by quite a significant bit, and I really give thanks, and I really thank God for this. And I don't think like having more money was something that I really prayed for, but I think he just naturally gave it, because he's the provider, and I think he sees all the maybe the big expense or the future expenses that I would require next time, and then he's always there to supply it. So besides understanding that God is the giver of this good gift, what other tangible I guess what other tangible benefits that I personally encountered is that I feel more self-assured, and I don't really depend on other people's opinion. And this confidence really comes from like inner confidence in God rather than just trying to be very showy in the workplace. Like I must be confident in the workplace in order to showcase, to promote, and to perform myself, to make sure that the management like sees me, they know my name, they know that my name is on every project. Because of if you see God as like the real boss, then you will do things that he likes. So sometimes I will be more mindful that I only say things that are helpful, encouraging, kind, or it fulfills like God's or even the company's mission. I won't say or do things intentionally to really to outshine people or to prove that I know a ton of things. Yeah. And there is this like very constant and gentle and very, very still confident throughout this working journey. Yeah. So one example would be like I think in one of my jobs, actually in my jobs, I naturally just get promoted at the very right time because like maybe around the season of appraisal, then like big projects would like just pile in and big visible projects that like maybe when I was working in a public agency, right, then it will go up all the way to minister. So that gives me a lot of like, I guess I didn't ask for it, but that gives me a lot of visibility and really profile myself in front of like management. And after the appraisal season is over, then everything is set and locked ready. Somehow or other, the big project will just suddenly die. Then I don't do anything about it anymore. So I felt like the big project really came just for me to shine and then it died because then nothing came out of the project. So it's really quite amazing. I think I didn't really push for it. It's really happened naturally. It's a very organic thing. Yeah. And I also believe that God has called me into this job and then he has equipped me well for this job. So the confidence really comes from him. Also with him knowing that he is the giver and then he's the provider of everything material and non-material, that also gives me less anxiety about my own performance towards colleagues, bosses, or stakeholders. So so the stakeholders could be any, like usually I'll talk to businesses and then the businesses are usually like founder, CEO, they're a lot older, they could be the same age. And I have to kind of like show that I know something, right? But knowing that God provides, then I know that like whatever that happens, then God will be there and I don't really have to, I think I still do care about what people think, but I think gradually I think lesser and lesser of what people think. And that has helped me lah, I think, in my own I guess character building or confidence building. Yeah. As long as I know that if I'm doing my best effort, I'm not cheating, I'm not damaging other people, I'm not doing something that I'm not supposed to do, that God will be displeased with, then I'm okay with it. Even if it's, let's say, like insufficient to our to my direct bosses, but then I feel like, okay, I think I did at least to what God wants, and I'm fine with that. I can sleep at night, I can sleep at peace at night lah. Yeah. So financially provided. So with all this financial blessing that God has given me, I ensure that I spend what is within my means and also being purposeful with each purchases. So for example, recently actually I bought quite a, I guess I don't know whether it's branded, but it's quite expensive bicycle. So but the purpose behind buying the bicycle is so that I can do things with family and friends, and that bicycle has like become like a common talking conversation topic with friends also. And this is what I value, the meaning behind the purchases lah. Yeah. And I think I try to be intentional with every purchase, but with knowing that I need to be accountable for all the small things and all the big things to God eventually. So I will think and pause about it, because I previously I was spending money with the mindset that whatever I do has no repercussion. But then knowing that eventually I need to account for what I do, right? So that takes things into a bit more, like, I guess I give more serious thoughts about whatever that I do and say lah. Yeah. So another example is that definitely, so around 5 years ago, when I was prepping for my wedding and my house renovation, so both of them was happening around the same time, and from engagement to wedding and house renovation, everything happened within a 7-month period. So it was really like big expenses within a short amount of time, and I had very limited resources. So we definitely, before we started to spend on things, we did me and my husband did a financial health check combined, and we only sign up for things that we can afford, and for things that we wanted to splurge, we know why we were splurging on that. It wasn't like just for show thing lah. I mean, there was a reason behind everything. So for example, we had a church wedding, and to us the church wedding was more important than a wedding dinner, because the church wedding these are the invited witnesses to our vows. Well, we see that I think wedding dinner is more our celebration, but I think the witnessing is more important to us. So instead of choosing what was cheapest in the market for church reception, we actually went for the most expensive option, which was easily double the price of market rate. And there were more attendees for our church reception than our wedding dinner. Like I would think a church reception maybe 300 people, and our wedding dinner was 120. And we didn't tell anyone that we were kind of like financially stretched lah. But randomly, the family member actually volunteered to pay for the church reception, like out of nowhere. Yeah, so we were really quite blessed in that. Like there was a heavy bill of our total spending, and also we didn't have enough very grand wedding, very lavish wedding. So actually, our wedding dinner was at a very mediocre restaurant. But somehow up to today, some friends, some people, some guests, they still talk about the food from the church reception and dinner, and said like it was like one of the best that they had. And I think it's quite amazing, because we really didn't really try to spend much, but I guess the outcome was a lot better than we expected it to be. Yeah. And the most surprising thing throughout that journey was that the ang paos that we received actually covered all our wedding expenses, from our gown rental to the wedding dinner, and it even actually overcovered our 3-week honeymoon vacation in South Africa. Yeah, we came back and said, we still have money. I thought we would be bankrupt, but oh my gosh, what's all this money doing here in our bank? Yeah. So through that, I also learned to be more prudent and be intentional about wise with money, and blessing does pour in unexpected ways. Yeah. And also through this journey, past year of working, right, there are moments that I'm still very tight-fisted about money. Like I'm a bit calculative, a bit petty about money, and because I want my savings to grow. But somehow or other, when I'm tight-fisted about money, I don't see my saving grow. Somehow it took a dip. I really don't know why. It just happened. But so when I decide to let it go, okay, not to be so calculative, and just don't hold on the money so tight, right? Somehow then the money will grow, then the money will increase. How can you increase so much? We look at each other, we say, I don't know. Yeah, so it is true that it's more blessed to give than to receive. And that's from the Bible, and I believe in that lah. Yeah. And I'm quite glad to hear from some of us that like we do some of us do regular stock take of recording and monitor your expenses. Maybe like could be through a mobile app or Excel sheet. Yeah, it really it definitely helped me in identifying identifying categories on how much I'm spending, and with that I can also reflect and think whether like for each category, is it a comfortable percentage spent in comparison to my income. Next, I will go on to giving. So with this financial blessing, what do I do with it? So definitely we all know that the first priority is to tithe. Not sure whether every one of us would agree with it, but that tithing was an area that I definitely struggled with, because I felt like my church was doing well. My church has always been a good cash flow position, and my amount is like really nothing compared to all the high earners in my church lah. Yeah. And it doesn't really make a dent, doesn't really make a difference for the church. So I didn't really see the value of tithing consistently over the years lah. Yeah. But recently, however, I learned from a church series that actually I have been viewing this tithing wrong, and I need to see that actually tithing is a gift back to God, and church is a vessel of that. So it's actually more like giving the money, like let's say directly to your parents. But then all along I have been seeing it as giving it to the pastors. So if I see it as okay, I'm giving it directly to God rather than giving the pastors, so that makes more sense to me, and that is something that I'm more comfortable with. And then whether the pastor they mismanage or misuse the money, to me, that is their account to God. That is like none of my business really. So yeah, as long as I fulfill my area of giving back to God. The second area is actually giving to missionaries or global churches. So I find that this is an area a tithing option that is usually forgotten because they are like outside and then out of mind. Yeah, and for me, then I will usually give to overseas churches where I did mission work in, for example, like the Philippines or Indonesia, where they need to build like a new church, you need to build a new compound, they need to rent a place for to expand their church lah, or to say expand their children program. So you might be asking how much or what is the ideal percentage for giving to church? I think the answer is definitely to give what is privately decided in your heart. So something that you are comfortable with. In fact, if you want to like level up, right, you can give something that that give beyond your ability, that you're not comfortable with, but then you still want to give. Yeah. So even if let's say the number is let's say like $100, $100, $10, or like $188 is whatever that you decide you can give lah. Yeah. But if you really, really need a number, I would say that it's between 10 to 15% of your income. Okay, the last part. So besides tithing to my church and other churches or overseas churches, it's quite natural for me to be very more generous with people. So I would try to celebrate their birthday or their anniversaries, or celebrate their milestones, like if they open a new shop, if they get a new job, I will usually arrange for treats or get presents for them lah. Yeah, and that is my form of paying forward, because when I was less well off, people has gifted me. And I find that I think gifting and celebrating milestones, those are rare form of appreciating people and using money as a means to show appreciation and to celebrate with them. Otherwise, when are you going to show your appreciation for people? I don't think there are like much called occasion to do that lah. So when I value this relationship, when I value these people over the money that I have, it makes it a lot easier for me to just give. And with that, I wanted to share not my story, but actually my some of my friends' story of how they have been generous. So one of them just shared with me recently was that like she wanted to give, like she had some money and then she wanted to give to people, and she didn't know who to give to, and like she had like I think like maybe $1,000, so she didn't know what to give to, so she prayed about it, and then God said, okay, give to this person, and then she wanted to just like give the money to the person, like wire the money over, right? And then God said like, no, don't give now. So my friend was like, huh, what do you mean? Like just don't give now. And then she just put the money aside for a couple of months until God said, okay, give now. And then that's where she decided to just give this friend randomly like this pot of money. And then the friend said, oh, this is really just the amount of money that I needed, the right amount of money at the right time. And if she had gave it like a bit earlier or a bit later, it wouldn't have made sense to the friend. It will really just make sense to the friend at that point of time. Yeah. And another story is that there's this auntie, then she was just like taking public transport, and then suddenly she felt like God told her like, oh, give 2K to this person who's sitting beside you, like this random stranger that she never spoke or met before. And then she's like, huh? Just give this person money? Then like God said yes. And then she just like, okay, went to tap the person and then say like, can you follow me to the ATM? Then the person just followed her, and then she withdrew that amount of money, and then she just give it to a stranger, and then she just left. Yeah, I think it's super crazy. I don't think that I'm sharing my friend's story because I haven't done that, and I'm not sure whether I will be at that level eventually. I mean, these are definitely older people. Yeah. So it's these stories actually motivate me and encourage me that like giving is okay, and it's not a very strange thing. I think it might be strange as a story, but actually when you do it, it's not that strange lah. Yeah. And also through their story, I'm a bit more encouraged and more motivated to actually give to people who need it on the street. So for example, let's say if they're selling like tissue paper, right? Then like usually you'll pay like maybe 3 packets of tissue for like $2 or $3. Yeah. So now my benchmark is that when I see that, I will just give whatever that is the biggest note in my wallet. So let's say if it's $50, it doesn't make sense to give $50 for 3 packets of tissue. I'll just give. Yeah. And or let's say if it's $10, then I'll just give. Like if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't really have to make sense to me as long as I am comfortable to give and I remember that it is more blessed to give than to receive. So if I give a $50, actually it's benefiting me more than the recipient, because the Bible says it's more blessed to give than receive. So I'm more blessed than the person. So to me, that makes sense. And then that is something that I will do. Yeah. But I think above all, I guess the last point I want to mention is that above all, to give, right, I think that the caveat of giving is that before giving, I will need to at least think of a person or actually try to soften my heart and try to love the person first. Because I mean there are times that I do give without thinking it through, and I felt like those were the times that I'm just like giving for the sake of giving, and that is like going through the motion. And I'm not sure that if it's something that I feel, then maybe the recipient will definitely feel it too. Yeah. And if I soften my heart to the person I'm giving to, and then I just give it with love, right? I think even if it's people who I dislike, and that has helped me quite a bit on like curing my very superficial heart and my very hardened heart, especially to those that I don't really see eye to eye to, and when people who I think they don't deserve it. But instead then I choose to think about them, maybe say a very like 5 second prayer for them, and then just to give. Yeah, I think definitely it's like a work in progress lah. Yeah, that I'm still trying to be a bit more loving and give a little bit more too. Yes. So this brings me to my last slide. I hope that this sharing helps you to see and understand a little bit better on how God is a giver and how we can be some possible ways that how we can be a better steward of the gift, which in this case is money. Yeah. So if you would like to know more, just I guess later we have a breakout room. If not, you can after this you can just like email me or WhatsApp me. Yeah. And thanks for listening. I'll hand over to Sean.
Cool. Yes, Shandon was on a thought, right? You want to finish the thought, and then we can discuss together and throw the question at our two speakers.
Sorry, what? Say again.
You were finishing a thought, and then suddenly we had an awkward silence, and then Christabel says, "Okay, let's all go back to the main room." Then I said, "Yes." Were you thinking of something?
I thought we finished that thought already.
Okay.
Basically, we were talking about like the what's that called, the order of priorities for how we handle money. So today we talked quite a lot about tithing and giving. So we're discussing a bit more about the last three, which is like saving, investing, and spending. Yeah.
Okay. My two church friends, do you all got anything to comment on that? I know, I guess Teresa said she doesn't invest, so.
Yeah, so I think I don't really do any investment myself, but then I think that there's actually a guideline to like let's say like which category. Like I don't know whether you're familiar with another organization called Compass. Yeah, so they actually have a guideline to let's say your housing, how much you spend over your income. Like food should be 5 to 15%, transportation 10 to 15%. So I think investment has a certain percentage as well, but I can't remember how much is it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we will all figure out our own spending budget and all this lah. Like some of you are foodies, some of you are not. Some of you can eat like rice and sauce, that's like good enough food because you don't live to eat. Okay. Sorry, you eat to live, not live to eat. Okay. So then again, that changes things. Your risk appetite, your investing horizon also changes. Just that I guess. I mean, the Bible of course does give notes and comments and instructions on like the idea of like your returns or investments lah. Okay, but I think again, God has a kind of like heavenly investment plans. So we can take some principles on earth, but I think his idea of investment is really giving. So it's hard lah. Okay. But anyway, yes. Okay, any questions that like struck you during the conversations that or from their sharings, or you have specific situations with the way you handle money that you think is relevant for the whole world to know?
I think just to add about like the investing, I mean not really related to investing, also that's something that I learned recently is that actually in the Bible it's God said that we highly discouraged to be guarantors for other people. So let's say sometimes if let's say your friend is going to start a business and they need a guarantor, right, for let's say the loan, then God encourages us not to do that. Yeah. But let's say either one of us or someone that we know is already in that situation, then the Bible says to actually get yourself out of the situation as quick as possible. Yeah. Because it doesn't really make sense that let's say your friend just run away and then you don't know whether your friend will run away with the money and then you'll be the guarantor for that loan, right? And then that makes you like cannot sleep at night. And then I think that also strain that relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Since you brought up the topic yourself, then I want to ask, right? How you say in giving, right? How far should our responsibility be? Meaning, like, I think based on the example that you mentioned, I think that means the idea is that there's a limit to your responsibility in giving to somebody else. I mean, to this specific person or organization. So how do you determine? Do you give? Oh, you need how much? Then I give you long. Or is it or it's like oh, this is how much I can give, or like I'm willing to do this long run journey with you, right? How do you, for lack of a better word, boundaries your relationship, your responsibility in this giving relationship?
I think there's a few ways. So one is when let's say when we do the regular stock take of our expenses, right? And then how much can we give like as in comfortably beyond what we are already giving, for example. And then I don't think there's a fixed answer to that. I will say that most of the time I will give to the number that I'm comfortable with, to the number that I feel like I feel good about it. It's not until like maybe I give a little bit extra and then actually I'm not too happy about it. Like, yeah, maybe not too happy about my action or not too happy, okay, this person doesn't deserve the gift of this value, for example. Yeah, I think definitely as long as I give something I'm comfortable with and that I am become a cheerful giver, yeah, and I give an amount that doesn't strain our relationship. So it's not that you want a $5,000 gift, then I will definitely give you, because to me, it doesn't make sense and then it strains our relationship. That I don't maybe love you as much, or I don't really view our relationship the same way on the worst state, then I wouldn't give that. I mean some benchmark there.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I think just now I was mentioning in the breakout group that like I think in different seasons we give in different amount. Sometimes we are maybe a bit stingy, but we give an amount that we're comfortable with. But then sometimes we give an amount that really, and what Teresa said, like it pinch us a little bit more. Yeah, I think there are seasons for that. Yeah.
Hello, I will offer a question. If that is okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I would like to ask our speakers about tithing. So will you consider like breaking up like your 10% tithe to like your church and like a non-church Christian organization? Like what do you guys think about that? Like say your church is very well off, like you know got good cash flow, so you feel like some other place might need it more.
Yeah, so for example, let's say if you only want to give 10%, then you can just split like 8%, 2%. I really think I don't really don't need a regular sum unless you gyrate to the machinery, right? Then that's a fixed sum. But let's say if I mean maybe there's a basic sum that I'm comfortable with, and I don't really set it as a percentage, I set it as amount that I'm willing to give. And if sometimes that I think I can give more, then I will do an ad hoc transfer. Like, yeah. Why some people try to calculate 10%? So I guess yeah, I'm a fool. Yeah, I don't know if that answers. I'll tell you anything to add.
How do you know? Wow, this is a difficult question. I mean, in the Christendom, the OT says that it's 10%, or actually not 10%. If you calculate everything that all their festivals, it's more than 10%, right? CFS, sure you have heard this before. After the NT, then basically, technically it's supposed to give everything you have, right? Technically, but technically it's technically. Technically, we don't need anything also. So impossible to say anything. Okay, Teresa, you have any comments?
I don't know, like I'm still processing, but I guess, yeah, what perhaps, okay, maybe I turn it around and think it in another way. Like perhaps like why do we limit within that 10%, right? Like, are we able to look beyond that? Like for example, like the 10% goes to the church. And if let's say there's an organization that you really feel like passionate for, like, will you be able to give more to that? Yeah, because I don't know, like, I feel that it may seem like we are taking it into our own hands about how do we decide where to give, whereby even though like we may feel that like, okay, maybe this place doesn't need so much of our support, but are we in that process, like are we making certain judgment as well? I'm not sure about that. It's just some of my thoughts around that. And I guess it is like a process of, I mean, tithing is not, I mean, it is about like providing for the church and ensuring that the pastors and the church workers are like sufficiently like provided for so that they can focus on serving the church, right? At the same time, it is also about the posture of giving as well, like that you acknowledge that, yeah, this first fruits is given by God, and I want to honor him, and hence I give to the church. Yeah, I feel that I'm not really answering the question, but my view is that, yeah, why not think about like giving in addition to the 10%? But of course, like it depends on your means as well, and there's no clear-cut answer to that. Yeah.
I got a question, a very short question. Sorry, Ifan, you have something to add? Okay. Do you find what do you find actually more helpful, micromanaging or macromanaging the finances? So do you go like how specific and detailed do you go for your many that you feel is helpful, and what happens if you exceed your budget for that particular allocation? Like what are your tendencies? Do you like cut back on your lunch money for the next week or something like that?
Sorry, what's the second part of your question again?
Like, so what do you do when you exceed
Okay.
or whatever parts of your planned expenditure?
I'm definitely not a micro managing person. Like I don't have a spreadsheet. I don't have an app. I used to do that, but like what Joshua you said, like I stopped after 1 week and it didn't happen. So my basic rule of thumb is just be careful with every spending and make sure that I don't have any big items that I spend on unnecessarily. But I think an easy way is really like to make sure that you don't overspend like on a daily or weekly basis. And if you keep to that rule, I think it should be quite safe. Like you won't find yourself in like a situation where you overspend. And what if I find myself spending more than I should in a particular week? Then of course is to examine again, like what other things can I cut out now? Like for example, there will be months where I spend a bit more, like because of birthday and things like that. But yeah, I think it's just being conscious and make sure that what's your next purchase and do I really need it? Like, and whether those stuff can be pushed back or cut out even, like so that you try to recover from that. Yeah. Ifang.
Yeah, I think Teresa basically covered it. I think you spend within your means. And for me, I'm not too, sometimes I micromanage in a sense that when I do my yearly or sometimes monthly or quarterly stock pick, I think I will like look through every figure. But as in then other months that I'm not too, I'm not doing my review, I'm quite like, I guess macro I don't really care about it much. Yeah, but then like last month definitely, and I want to buy the bicycle, and then it's like quite expensive. And then that definitely I burst my budget, right? And then what I do with that is that I really never do anything different. Because I think the first thing is I know that I'm spending within my means, right? I have money to cover that. So that's fine. But I think knowing that I overspend my budget there, I think knowing that was quite important. Like I think subconsciously then I will think about like next purchases, not so intentionally. Like maybe like, or instead of going out for a good meal, actually I don't really like food that much. Maybe I can just go and eat type of. Yeah, but it's not because I spend a lot, but more because okay, I think I overspend about quite a bit, and then I can cut down on whatever I cut down. But I don't intentionally do that. But I think just knowing that I go over budget, like it still leaves a mark in me. Yeah. But I think just spend within the means. So, and I think coming to that, that also brings, reminds me of the important aspect of money is that, like, you don't look at money as like, I guess, your security. Like, you don't feel like, okay, I have less money for this money, I can do this, can do that. I think like also it affects like how you view things or how you view yourself. It might be different, or at least it is definitely for me. Yeah, when I have more money, then I feel like, wow, I can do a lot of things. And that's where like, I feel more confident in it, and I realize I place some security in that numbers lah. Yeah, but actually just to realize actually with lower number, I have the same amount of security as I have more money more. Yeah, that is also, don't let money rob you of that. Yeah. It comes and go, I feel. I don't think it's like a learning lesson that I learn and then I apply it right away. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I learn from it again. I relearn again.
Okay.
You.
Yes, somebody was saying something. Oh no, that's just Joshua saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Uh, okay, anybody else has questions?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I was reminded of this saying when Yifang talk about being a guarantor. He's saying that Tan Qian, sorry, my Chinese sucks. Tan Qian Shang Gan Qing.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I think because when people think about money, they think their people are portraying like their values according to how money is. I think they are implying it, or they are getting this implication from someone else. Yeah, but I think in many situations, it's quite tough to avoid talking about money. Like for example, like in a breakout room, we are talking about how like maybe someone borrows money from you, then you need to ask from the person back. Yeah, or maybe like parents allowance, family allowance. Yeah, so I was wondering, are there any principles or how you can approach this topic?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's something that actually I learned to research on last month. Like, because in the Bible it says that like you shouldn't, ideally you shouldn't be a borrowing position. Like, shouldn't be like owning people a lot of money lah. Yeah, but at the same time, then God also say that when people ask you for money, you should be as generous as possible. So like, to me, that is like a disjoint as a conflict lah. How do I be generous and then lend people money for, also according to the Bible, actually are you trying to make people fall into something that God is trying to tell you not to do, which is to borrow a lot of money? Yeah, so the the learning I got was that for, we still should, let's say if someone asks us for money, we still should lend as much as possible as we can. And the guideline is that you lend with a notion that, with understanding that you might not get the money back. And are you okay with that? And that's the first thing. And then the second thing is to, if you lend that money, if the person don't return, will it damage your relationship with the person? If the answer is yes, then don't lend. Because I think everything that we do, right, is all about relationship with God, relationship with people. And if that is more valuable than money, then that is something that we should think about it first before lending the money. Yeah. So I think if you lend with the intention that, okay, I might not get it back and you're okay with it, I think just go ahead with lend. Yeah. If the person does give you back, then I mean, to you nothing has changed, the relationship stays the same. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. That's how I see it.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, so I think that's roughly it. Maybe I just throw one last one that is more to do with ourselves than with, because so far we talk about money relationship to others, but now we talk about money relationship to ourselves. Just one last question that maybe for fresh grads, they tend to think about this in their own ways. How do you come to terms with your earning power being less than others? I think, I mean, it kind of like brought up subtly here and there, right? In the sharings, but like a lot, one of the thing that you will encounter a lot in the marketplace is even in the same industry, lah, okay, you compare cross industry, nothing to say, lah. Sure, some people earn more, some people earn less, but even in the same tier, right? The same industry, the same company, the same tier, you can see peers who earn a lot more than you, and you're like, I'm a worthless guy. Does it mean how and then you feel bad about it, lah, right? So is there anything you can? I mean, I don't think anyone feels good about earning less than like your peers doing the same thing. But is there any advice you can share to like help you to be at ease with like your actual your current earning power rather than keep like being affected by the fact that it is less than others? Okay, so not a low amount, but the fact that it is less than others. Okay.
Actually, I see an upside to that, to earning a bit lesser. I mean, that's after a few years. Is that the more you earn, and then next time when God asks you to give up, it's more painful. So you earn lesser and then you don't feel so pain. Yeah, I think it's good in that sense. Like, I mean, eventually, if let's say next time you want to do like mission work, then you definitely know that you'll be drawing a lesser pay than what you're doing right now. Then it's less painful for you. Like. And I guess the richer you get, then I don't know if it makes sense that you might stray away from God a bit more. Yeah. And I guess then I think just now someone mentioned that like to be content, right? Yeah. So like on my lock screen, right, there's a verse that says like godliness with contentment is great gain. So I think if you have a lot of money and then but at the same time you don't feel contented, then actually everyone is on the same starting point. Everyone's on the same level. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with what Yifan said. And I think it goes back to your identity in Christ, which is the fundamental stuff that we are looking at, right? And of course, I mean, Sean said we're in the flesh. So of course, like there will be times, I don't think we're fully exempted from the kind of feeling of jealousy or envious. Like I think we will still struggle in that, but I think we have to, I think that's why it's so important to know like, why are we doing what we are doing? And just being clear of like, where is God leading you to, so that you do not, doesn't shake you when such conversation come out, and you can still be very rooted in knowing that, I mean, I'm earning less, but that's okay because, you know, whatever that God has placed in your heart. And that should be the anchor that keeps you grounded in wherever that you are. And of course, learning, really living out what the Bible says, that when he says like your treasures are in heaven and not on earth, where like thieves come in and steal, and that's that really shows, right, like very plainly, like that, you know, like the number in your income, like it's not the priority, but there's a greater priority that we're looking at. Yeah, I think those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Those are worth dollars, not cents. Okay lah. Random people got comments. I mean, okay, you can just read it. Is there a question, Josh, or is just a comment? Just a comment.
Comment.
Okay. Then it's quite late. We should all go and eat lunch. So with that, we will just end today's session. Thank you so much, Teresa and Ifang. Yeah. Okay, so if anything, you can always ask them or ask me to ask them, or you discuss this more in the breakout rooms, okay. So with that, we will. Oh, I have to show you all the next session very quickly. Sorry, I have to do it really quickly because my battery is running out. Okay. So the next session will be on a retreat, our like every like at the end of period retreat lah. Okay, so obviously we are still going to be in a socially restricted environment. So you'll do this very special thingy. Okay, let me show it to you. Okay, can you all see this? Can, right? Okay, so our next retreat, we will call it Yours Faithfully. Okay, so because we will be looking through, because this whole the last two topics on work lah, time, money is a lot to do with how we steward the resources we gain from God lah. So in this retreat, we will look at it again lah. Like what does it mean to be faithful lah to God with these resources we have received? Okay, so what we're gonna do, okay, is this. Okay, so this is the blurb. Okay, dear God, these past few months, this is a letter. Okay, it's a letter expressing our prayers to God. Dear God, these past few months since graduation have been so hectic. Okay, this is like most of your lives now, my life also. There's so many new things I have to deal with. There's work you're trying to fit into. There's new relationships and old ones to keep up. Now you are managing your finances. Okay, and then you have the differing amount of energy and time. Okay, so and then there's COVID lah, which does not help things lah. Okay, so honestly, are you doing a good job? Are you stewarding your life well? Don't know lah. We are just trying to do our best. Okay, so at the same time, we are also petitioning to God that He'll see us through the rest of this year and also 2022 lah. Okay, why are there so many? Okay. So we pray that through this session, we will be able to recollect and also reflect and process the things we've been doing thus far lah, these few months. Okay, so what we're gonna do, okay, we are going to be doing decentralized physical session. Okay, the details will come out to you soon, but we'll be probably moving in pairs or small groups through this session. So it'll be physical but decentralized. Okay, we'll be moving around. We won't be standing like we won't be in a house. We'll be outdoors. Hopefully doesn't rain. Okay, then more details will come. We'll ensure you that it is fun. Okay, this is what I promise when you join this thing. Okay, whatever we do, we'll make it as fun as we can for you. Okay, so with that, okay, some of you who maybe still not, we will see then the situation like what, but some of you who are maybe not very comfortable with physical things, then we will try to arrange some more virtual things for you. Okay, but generally it will be decentralized physical. Okay, more details to come. Look forward to it. Okay, with that, I will close in prayer, and then we will all go for a great lunch. Okay, I will pray. Okay, dear God, we thank you for today's session. Thank you for the speakers, Ifang and Teresa. We thank you, Lord, that through this session, you can also just spark our thoughts, Lord, on what does it mean to handle our money well, Lord. Remind us that our money is cash, and money is something we have here on earth, but we will not bring it to heaven, Lord. So teach us to use our treasures, to use our money here well, so that we can bring the treasures on from this side of the earth to heaven. So we pray, may you bless the weekend and the week ahead. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.